welcome back to Fan the Flame Dates. I'm Scott Phillips with House on the Rock Family Ministries. This is the second video in our How Hard Could It Be series, which is based on my book where I discuss my experiences as a stay-at-home dad. In this second video, I'd like to talk a little bit about one of the most important things that any marriage needs to have, and that is having mutual respect for each other. Once I started staying at home, I began to dread meeting other men for the first time. In our American culture, when two men meet, the first question they ask each other after being introduced is, "So, what do you do?" Sometimes we do it just because we're making small talk, but more often than not, it's our way of sizing up the other guy. After all, status can be instantly achieved by telling other people our occupation. Of course, the higher the wages and the greater the perceived responsibility an occupation has, the more status the man has. With this system firmly in place, I had no shot. I tried to avoid the question as best I could, but sooner or later I had to confess to being a stay-at-home dad and taking care of our kids. The reaction was almost always the same. The other guy would have the same look on his face as if I had just declared that I was a cult leader, and then say, "Oh, okay," and start to end the conversation as quickly as possible, and then begin to look for another guy to measure himself against. Clearly, he had me beat. I might as well warn a sign that says, "Don't bother," does nothing all day. Even after I went back to school to pursue a master's degree, I still came up short. Frankly, the women I met at activities like story time at the library weren't much better. Most assumed I worked second or third shift. Others thought I was in between jobs. A few just assumed I was a deadbeat. They wouldn't say that, of course. They would just make sure their kids didn't sit anywhere near mine. Some marveled at my wife, saying they couldn't imagine having to work all day and then come home to make dinner. And for the record, neither could Mary, since I cooked. One of our relatives wondered if we had hot dogs every night. And for the record, no. The conversation with the bewildered mom sticks out in my mind more than anything else, and went something along these lines. The lady said, "So, do you work at night, or do you just have flexible hours that you can be at school during the day?" And I replied, "Well, neither actually. I'm staying at home to take care of my kids. My wife teaches at a local college." And this confused woman, apparently thinking I just lied to her face, said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, it's unusual, but it's working for us." And at this point, you would have thought she would have dropped the conversation and backed slowly away from me like so many others. But not this lady. She continued, "I've seen you at all these school functions. I just had to ask. Sometimes I've seen your wife here, but mostly it's been you. You look like someone you know respectable, but I just had to ask." Now, to this day, I have no idea what the point of that statement was, but I think she was trying to compliment me on the fact that I didn't look like an unkempt hillbilly. Somehow, the conversation got worse. I said, "Well, I am going to school while I'm at home, so there are times she pinch hits for me." And the lady said, "Well, so she cooks and cleans in the evening when she gets home?" And notice how she assumed that I was incapable of doing either of those tasks. And I said, "No, I take care of all that. I'm fairly good at it." And she replied, "Well, I'm sure she helps a lot. Good luck. You'll need it." And I said, "Oh, I'm already lucky. I don't have to talk to you anymore." Just kidding. I made up that last statement, but the rest of it is practically verbatim. I wish I could say that this conversation was the exception, but I had plenty that were similar to it. Regardless of whether the one working at home is mom or dad, the world simply does not see the work that is done around the house as having equal value to the work that is done at the office or job site. We don't even have positive terms to accurately describe the work of those who stay at home. Stay-at-home mom, or in my case dad, implies that that's all that happens, when in fact many stay-at-home moms and dads rarely spend all day at home. Homemaker is a little better since it at least implies that some work takes place, but it's really just the government's term for the role since the name is gender neutral. The most unfortunate term, in my opinion, is the traditional housewife, which often conjures up images of those famous moms from the 1950s like June Cleaver, but has recently re-entered the pop culture with two television series, the fictional Desperate Housewives and the reality show The Real Housewives of, neither of which portray the stay-at-home parent in any kind of positive light. Truly, the stay-at-home parent gets no respect from modern society. And with secular society increasingly apathetic or even hostile to the stay-at-home parent, the desire to band together with other like-minded couples is very strong. Churches have begun to recognize this, and many communities have at least one weekday morning Bible study or MOPS, Mother of Preschooler groups. Unfortunately for me, there aren't many options for men. I often thought I should start a POPS group, Papas of Preschoolers. Well, these kind of groups are great for providing the fellowship and encouragement to the stay-at-home parent and for fostering the atmosphere of mutual respect. They cannot replace the sense of respect of one's work that the stay-at-home spouse needs from his or her working partner. It wasn't until I was the one staying at home that I truly understood that. As always, the Bible is our guide in this endeavor. In describing the wife of noble character in Proverbs 31, the writer says, "Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works bring her praise at the city gate." Now, note the two ways that respect can be shown to the stay-at-home spouse. First, they should be allowed to enjoy the fruits of their labor because they have earned it. God does not call for those who take care of the home to drudgingly work all the time. Secondly, they're to be praised publicly for their work at the city gate. Now, I ask you, who is in the best position to be able to fulfill this need in their life? Well, the answer, of course, is their working spouse. Working spouses can show respect to their stay-at-home partner by making sure he or she gets a break from time to time to relax and enjoy life. It communicates that we understand that the work is hard and that it is valued. We should also find cause to publicly praise our spouse for the work that they do. We should be telling others what a great job they do in managing the house, working it into our casual conversations. And we should be doing this praising with our spouse present. As I mentioned before, there were several times soon after our transition that we would be visiting with some friends where the wife would comment that she couldn't possibly manage both the home and the job. And of course, that statement was made as a way of encouraging Mary, but it also implied that I wasn't doing anything to help. I don't have the words to adequately express how it felt when Mary would reply, "Actually, Scott does a great job of taking care of the home. He takes care of almost everything." Why is showing respect for your spouse's work so important? Well, first of all, it's obeying God. Romans 13 says that we are to give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. And if honor, then honor. Second, it's obviously going to help our marriage relationship. Romans 12:10 says that we are to be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourself. This commandment is important to all of our relationships, but especially in our marriage. And the Bible also tells us that showing respect to our spouse yields great benefit in our own spiritual walk. Showing respect to our spouse helps our prayer life in 1 Peter 3:7 and enables us to serve in leadership roles in 1 Timothy 3:4-5 as a church leader, and it allows us God's peace to be with us, as we see in Philippians 4:8-9. And just as important, mutual respect between spouses provides a model for their children to follow. Many of us are familiar with the command to honor our father and mother, first given in Exodus 20:10 and repeated multiple times throughout the Scriptures. We often quote this commandment in the context of children obeying their parents, and that is proper. Paul actually used the word obey in Ephesians 6:1. But this idea of honor goes much further than that. We respect our parents as the ones who give us life and as God's representatives to us here on earth. This learned behavior and character trait can be extended to other relationships in our kids' lives and eventually to their future spouse. But how do children learn to show respect and honor? By watching mom and dad. When our sons see me showing Mary respect and honor for her role in their family, her status as a child of God and as a woman, they begin to understand how a godly man and husband should act and hopefully begin to show this attitude towards others in general and to women in particular. Likewise, when our daughter Abby sees how dad treats mom, she's going to learn to recognize when this attitude isn't present in a man and again, hopefully, steer clear of him in spending meaningful time together. Once a working spouse begins to have a better understanding of the nature and difficulty of the work that is needed to manage a home and begins to understand the lack of respect that the stay-at-home parent receives from the world, a true home-work partnership can happen. The marital bond will be stronger and the home will be more secure and peaceful. So, I invite you to download the knee-to-knee, nose-to-nose questions that we've prepared for you on fantheflamedates.com and talk about the giving and receiving of respect in your relationship. We'll be praying for your discussions as you continue to seek to build your relationship and build your house on the rock. Thanks for watching.